A woman quickly got involved with a younger colleague right after breaking up with her boyfriend. The junior was very attentive and eager, even wanting to sleep together on their first night out alone. Elisa, a news anchor, enjoyed being a bit spoiled and demanding in her previous relationship. One of her favorite things was making her boyfriend choose between her and his other commitments. They had spent 8 happy years together. One day, the head of the news department asked Elisa to take over the 4 p.m. live broadcast, but she refused, as she was a morning news anchor and had worked hard to build her reputation in that role, so she didn't want to give it up easily. Despite the head's insistence, Elisa suggested that it was a new era and recommended they pair up to male anchors for the afternoon slot instead. This suggestion made the head angry. At that moment, a male anchor volunteered to take over the afternoon shift. It was Jackson, Elisa's ex-boyfriend, whom she had recently broken up with. The head initially tried to discourage him, as Jackson was a star anchor and the afternoon slot had lower viewership. However, Jackson was determined, saying that if Elisa couldn't be convinced, he would take the shift himself. The head, now desperate, demanded that Elisa talk Jackson out of it. Elisa approached Jackson, assuming he still had feelings for her. However, Jackson claimed he was only doing it to avoid any awkwardness. Elisa still pushed him to get over his love for her quickly. In response, Jackson offered a compromise. He said he preferred the morning slot and would try to move the afternoon broadcast earlier so that Elisa could keep her position. Elisa laughed at the idea, doubting he could succeed. However, Jackson managed to get the programmer scheduled, and when the original senior anchor couldn't host, he stepped in as the replacement. Elisa, still self-centered, began to imagine that her ex-boyfriend was still in love with her. Wanting revenge on Jackson for the way he had broken up with her, she decided to show up at the next live broadcast looking stunningly beautiful with perfect makeup and hair. But instead of being affected, Jackson stole her closing line during the broadcast. Frustrated, Elisa stepped on his foot with her high heels. After the broadcast, the staff wrapped a jacket around her because her skirt had torn. The staff commented that if Jackson hadn't stolen her line, the camera would have caught the wardrobe malfunction. Elisa began daydreaming again, thinking that Jackson might still have feelings for her. Meanwhile, Junior Ethan had a crush on Elisa and hoped she would stop obsessing over Jackson. Ethan believed her dislike of Jackson was actually a sign of lingering feelings. Out of the blue, Elisa suggested they go on a date, and Ethan was thrilled by her initiative. They planned their date for the weekend, but their conversation was overheard by Jackson. During a meeting, Jackson purposefully asked about the weekend work schedule and learned about a shoot related to marine waste. He immediately instructed the team to send Elisa to cover it. Although the staff thought it was a low-quality program that no one would want to cover, Jackson was confident Elisa would agree. Sure enough, she did, without hesitation. The shoot was planned to last 14 minutes, which was significant since Jackson had been anchoring for 14 years and had never taken such control of the screen. Due to the weekend filming, Elisa had to cancel her date with Ethan. However, Ethan decided to accompany her on the shoot, and they even planned to share a room. On Saturday morning, the production team informed Jackson that Elisa had brought Ethan to the shoot. The shoot was set for 2 days and 1 night, making everyone suspect the two were romantically involved. Upon hearing this, Jackson immediately got out of bed and requested that the filming be wrapped up in a single day. Following his orders, the staff worked through difficult conditions to finish the shoot in 1 day. While watching Elisa struggle in the waves like seaweed, Ethan laughed and thoughtfully handed her cold medicine and even gave her his sweater to wear. Meanwhile, with Elisa still not back, Jackson grew increasingly anxious and kept calling her, but she didn't answer. In the evening, after returning in Ethan's car, he asked her why she wanted to be with him. Elisa admitted that she didn't really like him, explaining that no matter how hard she tried, she could never truly have him. Ethan understood that her dislike was the opposite of what she felt and was aware of his own emotions. Regardless of where Elisa's heart was, he planned to keep getting closer to her until she let go of Jackson. Hearing this, Elisa felt unsettled, and unexpectedly, Ethan moved closer and kissed her, which alarmed her. The scene shifted to a parking office where Elisa was now working as a parking attendant, looking completely different with long bangs covering her eyes. Even more strangely, she was now being called Luna. Luna confided in a colleague about a strange dream she had where she was a news anchor, broke up with her boyfriend, went to the beach for a photo shoot, and kissed a junior. The dream had felt incredibly real, which left her confused. Her therapist suggested she try creating a more interesting life, like falling in love, which made Luna blush because she already had a crush on someone. Luna admired a man named Lucas, also a news anchor. She seized the opportunity to hand out parking guides at the news station so she could secretly observe Lucas. She admired his cool but kind demeanor, and influenced by female-centered web novels, she believed that a man like him, though distant with others, would be loving toward his partner. However, when facing her crush, Luna didn't dare confess her feelings. She often hid and watched from a distance, but when she saw Lucas getting close to a female anchor, she decided she wouldn't let another woman take him away. Luna resolved to boldly confess her feelings, believing her looks would win him over. Just then, a group of protesters arrived at the TV station. Angry about an incorrect report on onions made by Lucas, the protest leader threatened him with a pickaxe. Luna quickly intervened, placing a box over one of the protesters' heads as she grabbed Lucas and ran away. While hiding, Lucas accidentally covered Luna's mouth with his hand. After the protester was taken away, Lucas expressed his concern for Luna, which left her stunned. Emboldened by his words, she kissed him. Lucas was shocked by the unexpected kiss from a stranger, freezing in place as Luna happily left, waving at him as she went. Later, Luna rode her bike home when someone called out to her. Strangely, they called her Elisa. She turned around to see her ex-boyfriend, Jackson, from her dream, standing there. Puzzled, she wondered how someone from her dream could appear in real life. Oddly, her psychiatrist also called her Elisa, and medical records revealed that she was actually Elisa, a news anchor. Realizing that Elisa wasn't just a character from her dreams, but her true identity, Luna was shocked. The night before, as a parking attendant, she had saved Lucas, who she had long admired. However, Jackson had called her Elisa and criticized her for mixing her personal and professional lives, referring to her filming with juniors. Confused, Luna shouted that she wasn't Elisa. The next day, her psychiatrist explained that Luna and Elisa were the same person and she was suffering from dissociative identity disorder. Still in disbelief, Luna noted a scar that she believed was unique to her, but it mysteriously disappeared. Despite her doubts, she woke up at 4 a.m., put on her glasses, and pulled back her bangs. After getting ready, she arrived at the news station as Elisa. At work, she forgot her access card, but Jackson helped her get in. Outside the elevator, he mentioned how she had pretended not to know him the night before, though Elisa had no memory of this. At the news station, Junior Ethan was upset with Elisa over what had happened the previous night. Ethan had kissed Elisa, and although she had almost been moved, she resisted. Misunderstanding the situation, Ethan was angry all day. After work, Elisa went home to sleep, and by 4 p.m., she switched back to Luna's personality. She styled her hair and headed to her parking job, excitedly telling a colleague about kissing Lucas. But when Lucas approached, Luna quickly hid under a table. When Lucas asked about her, the colleague falsely claimed that Luna hadn't shown up to work on time. After Lucas left, Luna explained to her colleagues that she was avoiding him as part of a strategy she had learned from online novels playing hard to get, which was supposed to make someone fall deeper in love. Later that evening, after work, Lucas returned to the parking lot and asked if Luna had shown up for work. At that moment, Luna, carrying a cardboard box, was leaving the newsroom where Lucas worked and bumped into him right outside the door. Lucas directly asked why she had kissed him the previous night, as he couldn't figure out a reason. Just as she was about to answer, Luna noticed Lucas smiling while talking to another colleague. Seeing him so polite and handsome made her burst into tears unexpectedly. Lucas, however, walked away with a cold expression. Luna cried all the way to the parking lot and shared her frustration with a colleague, upset that Lucas's reaction wasn't like the ones described in the online novels she read. Back home, still upset, she wrote in her diary about how she had made Lucas angry, blaming her own rude behavior for upsetting the man she liked. But at 4 a.m., her alarm went off and Luna switched back to her other personality, Elisa, heading to the newsroom for work, completely forgetting the events of the previous night. By 4 in the afternoon, she changed back to Luna and, at the parking lot, left a gift of 1,000 paper stars she had folded at the reception for Lucas. Remy, a junior anchor, handed the stars to Lucas, encouraging him to make a wish, but he turned coldly and walked away. Remy called after him, but Lucas, in an uncharacteristic burst of anger, shouted back at her. Remy wasn't upset, but hoped that Lucas would open up and let his wishes come true. After work, Lucas followed a sign reading "Open a New World" into an office and opened the bag of stars from Luna. Inside, he found a letter where Luna candidly expressed her feelings for him. As Lucas read her somewhat awkward words, he felt something different stir in his heart, realizing he had often found himself watching Luna. That night, in the parking lot again, Lucas asked Luna why she had kissed him. She replied that it was for the same reason she had written in her letter, because she liked him. After her confession, she apologized, expecting rejection. But Lucas didn't blame her. He admitted that his questioning her was inappropriate and confessed that ever since the kiss, he had been feeling strange. He explained that his anger had started when he saw Luna crying, but now that he understood the reason behind her kiss, he was no longer upset. Luna confessed again, saying she truly liked Lucas and that, despite everything, she had been happy during her time of unrequited love. Both turned to leave but hesitated, then walked toward each other. Knowing that this was Lucas's first kiss made Luna even more curious about him, and Lucas was equally curious about who Luna really was. She got into Lucas's car, eager to learn more about the man she liked. At midnight, Lucas took Luna to his home, where she noticed photos of him with his brother. When she asked about them, Lucas revealed that his brother had passed away years ago and that his mother often mistook him for his deceased older brother. Luna responded, saying, "The fact that you're still alive is a good thing." Her simple words deeply moved Lucas. She then shared a bit about herself, explaining that she was an only child and both of her parents had passed away, leaving her with nothing. But now, she added, she had Lucas. He smiled warmly at this, a smile that Luna found incredibly attractive. She planned to speak with Lucas's mother, suggesting that they focus on gratitude instead of sorrow. Her words seemed to resolve a long-standing issue in Lucas's heart. By 4 a.m., Luna's personality shifted back to Elisa, who woke up in an unfamiliar room with a strange man asleep on the living room sofa. Shocked, Elisa worried she might have had a one-night stand and quietly gathered her clothes. She noticed Lucas's work badge on the table. At work, she researched him and discovered that he was a news anchor at another media company. She asked a colleague to find out more about him. While her team was preparing to shoot a segment inside a refrigerated truck to showcase seafood, the producer had originally planned to assign the task to the well-known Jackson. However, he passed the opportunity to Elisa, raising suspicions among the team that he still had feelings for her, which he denied. The producer briefed Elisa on the details, just as Jackson had expected. That evening, Elisa entered the truck to begin filming, but unexpectedly discovered a body inside and got locked in. As the temperature dropped, she shivered from the cold and texted her producer for help. While waiting and fighting the cold, she thought of Jackson, but her pride kept her from reaching out to him. Thankfully, a colleague arrived to free her, and to her surprise, she saw Jackson emerging from the shadows. During their previous relationship, Elisa had once asked if he would save her if she fell into water, to which Jackson had always jokingly replied that she should save herself. Seeing him now, someone she couldn't let go of, she felt hurt and asked why he had come. Jackson seemed unable to answer. After they got into the car, Jackson noticed her hands were trembling and kindly fastened her seatbelt for her. Upon arriving home, Elisa couldn't help but ask why he had come to her aid despite sending a distress message to the producer. Jackson, trying to stay calm, lied and said he was simply concerned about the team. However, Elisa noticed his mismatched shoes, revealing his hastiness. With a cold tone, she told him not to bother saving her in the future. The next day at the news station, their neighbor Rowan commented that Jackson was like the long-legged uncle from a Korean drama, someone who silently cared for his ex despite their breakup. The more Jackson tried to explain himself, the more convinced Rowan became that he still had feelings for Elisa. Recently, Rowan had visited the hospital for a wrist issue, and Jackson had held her wrist out of concern, a gesture that displeased Elisa, who had witnessed it. Meanwhile, after parking his car, Lucas deliberately passed by the window of the newsroom where Luna worked, only to find her missing. At work, news anchor Remy quietly kept an eye on Lucas and even asked if he thought she was beautiful, to which he nodded. Remy felt uneasy at his response, as Lucas, known for his reserved nature, wasn't one to comment on others' looks. Recently, though, he had been more emotional, leading Remy to suspect he was seeing someone. She asked a colleague to find out more, but Lucas just smiled without answering. Later that day, Lucas returned to the parking lot, but Luna was still absent. Back at home, the sight of a cup on the table reminded him of the night Luna had spent there, curiously exploring his room. Around her, Lucas seemed to drop his guard, revealing his innermost thoughts. He shared the story of his older brother, who had been left in a vegetative state after a tragic accident on the day of Lucas's graduation. His mother had blamed him for inviting his brother to the ceremony, and not long after, his brother passed away. Even though he had already been selected as a news anchor, seeing his mother's grief led Lucas to pursue his brother's dream, believing it would make him proud in heaven. Upon hearing this, Luna had asked if living like this made him happy. With teary eyes, Lucas admitted that he had been living for his brother, hiding his true self all along. Remembering this, he returned to the parking lot and finally encountered Luna. He mentioned how she had left without a word after spending the night at his place. Luna, covering her mouth shyly, found him to be romantic. She then asked how he knew she worked there, as he had been looking for her in the parking lot even before she wrote to him. Flustered, Lucas confessed that he had noticed her a long time ago, always hiding behind her bangs and shyly avoiding his gaze while kindly saving him a parking spot. He admitted that Luna was unique and endearing. Luna believed that Lucas had developed feelings for her. However, he clarified that it wasn't exactly love, but rather the fact that he had experienced many firsts with her, which made him think of her often. One evening, Remy and a colleague arrived at a parking lot. The colleague mentioned seeing Lucas smile at a woman in a restaurant earlier, commenting that she looked familiar. When they parked and spotted Luna, the colleague exclaimed that she was the woman they had seen. Remy then noticed Lucas walking with Luna, smiling in a way she had never seen him smile at her. At 4 a.m., Luna's alternate personality faded, and Elisa, her main personality, emerged. That day, the news station's director introduced a young new anchor, Shin Jinhua, to Elisa, subtly praising her while criticizing Elisa's experience. The team leader informed Jackson that the director planned to replace Elisa with Shim. Upon hearing this, Jackson looked concerned. The director began undermining Elisa, accusing her of mistakes during broadcasts and claiming she lacked youth and qualifications. Later, Elisa was called to a review meeting due to a rule about minimizing on-site recordings, a rule she had broken twice. Nervous, she attended the meeting, where Shim suddenly demanded that Elisa apologize, accusing her of compromising the integrity of all anchors. Hesitant but under pressure, Elisa stood up, bowed, and apologized. Jackson felt conflicted watching her bow so easily. The night before, after rescuing her from a freezer, Jackson had spoken harshly to her, embarrassed by their past relationship. During their time together, he had been questioned about why he dated someone like Elisa, who seemed unworthy of him as a star anchor. Jackson wished Elisa could succeed in broadcasting without him, but Elisa confessed she couldn't meet expectations, as she had never been exceptional. Since their breakup, they had no relationship. The next day, seeing Jackson and Shim in a recruitment ad for the news station troubled Elisa. A gossiping colleague mentioned seeing a woman resembling Elisa in another company's parking lot, speculating that she could be her sister, rumored to be deceased. Elisa firmly told the colleague not to speculate, stating that her sister was still alive. Years ago, Elisa's sister went missing during a graduation trip. The police found no trace of her, neither a body nor a clue. Afterward, Elisa found her sister's diary, which was full of admiration for her and dreams of working in a parking lot. After reading it, Elisa adopted her sister Luna's identity. As time passed, Luna's personality began to form, with Elisa often unable to remember previous events, sometimes discovering unexplained injuries. One day, a colleague identified Lucas as a famous anchor from a nearby news station, triggering memories of the night at his house in Elisa's mind. Determined to find out who Lucas really was, Elisa visited his news station. While registering, Lucas appeared behind her, smiling. Startled by his presence and seeing Jackson approach, Elisa quickly turned to avoid being recognized and fled. This angered Jackson, who sensed a connection between Lucas and Elisa. Elisa rushed to the restroom, where memories began to surface, causing her severe headaches. In a fit of distress, she broke a mirror and fainted. When she woke up, Luna's personality had taken over, and she found herself in the medical office with Lucas by her side. Luna had no memory of the previous day. Lucas mentioned the broken mirror and revealed he had already paid for its replacement. Gently touching her forehead, he made Luna feel unexpectedly happy. Later, Luna visited her psychologist, who reminded her of her dual personality disorder and explained that once she was healed, the personalities would merge, leading to the disappearance of Luna. However, feeling happier as Luna than as Elisa, she was reluctant to let go of her identity. That night, determined not to let Elisa take over, Luna wrote in her diary. At 4 a.m., when Elisa's main personality re-emerged. She read the diary, which explained the condition and Luna's desire to remain in control of the body. After reading, Elisa looked at a childhood photo with her sister, overwhelmed with sadness. The following day, Jackson asked Elisa if she had visited the neighboring news station, but she denied it. After work, she tried calling Lucas, but he didn't pick up. Later, after finishing a news broadcast, Lucas noticed a missed call from Elisa and immediately returned it, but she didn't answer. That evening, a colleague, Remy, approached Lucas with news that their boss wanted them to join a gathering. At the gathering, the boss harassed Remy, but Lucas stood up for her, which led to the boss angrily throwing water at him. Remy thanked Lucas, but didn't want to escalate things further with their boss. After the gathering, Lucas took Elisa out for udon noodles. Noticing that he was upset, Elisa learned about the harassment from the boss and decided to take action. The next day, in the parking lot, Elisa saw the director on a phone call and quickly confirmed her suspicion that he wasn't a good person. When Luna, her alternate personality, hesitated to pay the parking fee, the director rudely poked her with a parking ticket. Seizing the opportunity, Luna loudly accused the director of poking her chest with the ticket. The incident escalated to the parking lot's administrative office, where the director defended himself while Luna played innocent. The superiors determined that the director's actions were inappropriate, labeling them as harassment, and decided to take legal action. Feeling helpless, the director knelt before Luna, begging for forgiveness. After hearing about Luna's retaliation against the director, Remy approached her to ask if she was dating Lucas. Luna admitted it, and while Remy was upset, she wasn't jealous and even invited Luna for street stall sea snails. As they ate, Lucas arrived, and the two women happily discussed the director's downfall. Suddenly, Lucas received a phone call and planned to leave, but turned back and asked Luna to accompany him to a place. Lucas asked Luna to join him in visiting his mother, who was in the hospital causing trouble for the nurses. When they arrived, Lucas's mother mistook him for her deceased older son. Luna introduced herself as Lucas's girlfriend and reassured his mother, holding her hand and asking if she was eating and sleeping well. She comforted the mother by assuring her that Lucas was still alive and doing fine, which brought peace to the mother's heart. The mother then asked Lucas about his feelings for Luna. Seeing how easily Luna calmed his mother, Lucas felt even more affectionate toward her. That night, Luna boasted about the rope ring Lucas's mother had given her, while Lucas gently fixed her hair under the night sky. Luna quietly took Lucas's hand, smiling as their bond grew deeper. Early the next morning, Elisa woke up confused to find a ring on his finger. After checking his diary, he learned what had happened, but felt annoyed and removed the ring. That day was the news team's building event. On the way, Elisa realized the venue was a park, the same place where his sister, Luna, had gone missing years ago. When they arrived, the innkeeper warned everyone about the dangers of the nearby forest, where many had gotten lost and died. This saddened Elisa, and he quickly left after the event. Instead of heading home, he went to the forest entrance, recalling how he had convinced his sister to go on the graduation trip that led to her disappearance. Despite the forest's eerie atmosphere, Elisa entered without hesitation. Suddenly, he heard a strange noise and, panicked, began to run. He tripped, fell, and fainted, remembering how his sister had been reluctant to travel, shedding tears over the painful memory. The following day, Elisa and Jackson co-anchored the news. During the broadcast, a video clip played, telling the story of two sisters where the younger sister relied heavily on her older sister, mirroring Elisa's own life. Suddenly, Elisa began to convulse and appeared distressed. Jackson knelt down to comfort her as she tearfully insisted that she had never harmed her sister. Jackson hugged her tightly, stroking her back to calm her down. Under his gentle touch, Elisa slowly regained her composure. The news broadcast wasn't over yet, so Jackson helped her to her feet, and together they finished the final segment of the show. The next day, Jackson quietly took Elisa's hand and led her into an elevator in full view of everyone. Once inside, with the elevator empty, Elisa asked him to let go and leave her alone. Jackson released her hand but, noticing the pain on her face, asked if she was really sure. Elisa softly shook her head no. At that moment, someone else entered the elevator, and Jackson immediately shielded the crying Elisa with his body, holding her tightly from behind. As the elevator emptied again, Elisa refused to let him go. Jackson decided to close the elevator doors, gently caressing her cheek as she continued crying. He asked her to look at him, and when she did, he suddenly kissed her. She didn't push him away. Later that night, Elisa woke up at home and saw that Jackson was still there. Before she could react, he suggested going out for a late-night snack. While they ate, Elisa kept staring at him, unsure if everything that had happened was real or just a dream. Jackson reassured her that it was all real. After their meal, they returned to her home, where Jackson offered to stay until she fell asleep. As she looked at him, memories of their past relationship flooded back. She had proposed to him after 8 years of dating, but he had rejected her, having made it clear from the beginning that he was against marriage. Feeling hurt and confused, she wondered why he had dated her for so long if marriage was never an option. Eventually, Jackson broke up with her, and though she had tried to confront him, he remained cold, pulling his hand away and walking off. Now, as she slept, Jackson planned to leave but decided to stay when he saw her quietly sobbing in her sleep. When she woke up, he took her to the hospital to address her panic disorder. Elisa suggested a hospital she had been to before, and he drove her there. At the hospital, she spoke to the doctor about her dual personalities and her occasional memories of Luna, a personality she realized had developed from her sister. Years ago, as children, Elisa and her sister had lost their parents and were raised by their grandmother. They had very different personalities. Elisa was independent, while her sister depended on her. One day, Elisa had encouraged her sister to go on a graduation trip, thinking it would help her become more independent. However, her sister disappeared during that trip. Years later, when the case of her disappearance was legally closed, Elisa and her grandmother continued to wait for her return. Unfortunately, their grandmother passed away soon after. After their grandmother's death, Elisa found her sister's diary, which revealed her dream of becoming a parking lot attendant. Out of grief, Elisa begged to work at a parking lot, unpaid, just to sit there. At first, she pretended to be her sister, but over time, this led to her developing a split personality. Her doctor showed her a video of herself as Luna, in which she expressed being much happier than Elisa ever was, which troubled her deeply. After leaving the doctor's office, she lied to Jackson, saying that she was fine. As it began to rain, Jackson grabbed a broken umbrella and sheltered her from the rain. Back home, Jackson kindly made her scrambled eggs with tomatoes. At the dinner table, he noticed a rope ring on her finger and asked about it, but she brushed it off, though the ring seemed to make her feel uneasy. The next morning, Elisa woke up again to find Jackson still at her place, cleaning her messy home. A little while later, they went out to buy cleaning supplies, sampled fried pork cutlets, and picked up her favorite ice cream at the supermarket. This scene was witnessed by Lucas, confirming their relationship. Lucas visited the parking lot daily to check on his girlfriend, Luna, who hadn't shown up for work in several days. Since Luna had mentioned she didn't use a phone, Lucas had no way to contact her. That evening, when he inquired about Luna at the parking lot, no one had any information, but a coworker gave him a phone that had fallen from her pocket when she fainted. The phone wouldn't turn on, even after being charged. Despite this, Lucas asked to keep the phone, missing Luna deeply. The next day, puzzled by her claim of not owning a phone, Lucas tried to get her contact information from the parking lot office, but they didn't have it either. Later, a colleague from Elisa's company showed up at Lucas's TV station, saying they had seen him speaking with Elisa's sister. This was the first time Lucas had heard the name Elisa. After some online research, he discovered that Elisa looked exactly like Luna. Remembering that Luna had claimed to be an only child, Lucas became even more confused. That night, Lucas took a taxi to Luna's apartment and saw her with Jackson, returning from the supermarket. Deeply anxious, Lucas frowned as he watched them, unaware of what was going on. Meanwhile, Jackson cooked pork cutlets for Elisa, who happily enjoyed the meal. At that moment, they saw a news anchor in his 50s making a comeback on television. Jackson looked at Elisa, hoping that one day he, too, could become a renowned news anchor. Elisa expressed her desire for him to always be the primetime news anchor and looked forward to sitting next to him on that day. Hearing such encouraging words from Elisa made Jackson very happy. The next morning, Elisa woke up to find that Jackson wasn't at home, and she thought he had left. However, he soon returned with groceries, having bought a lot of food for her. When Elisa mentioned she wanted to eat pork belly, Jackson instantly suggested they go out for barbecue. Delighted, she quickly went to change clothes. Just then, Jackson received a phone call from his neighbor's younger sister, informing him that his grandmother had been injured and was hospitalized. As Elisa came out dressed and ready, Jackson hurriedly left, visibly anxious. Watching him leave, Elisa was reminded of their breakup. After Jackson ended their relationship, Elisa had tearfully begged him for forgiveness and promised never to bring up marriage again. But despite her pleas, Jackson remained cold and determined to separate. After rushing away, Jackson later returned to her house in the rain, wearing a tender expression. He suggested they continue their relationship without the need for marriage, offering to care for her whenever she was unwell. After hesitating, Elisa refused, unable to accept such a relationship and fearful of being hurt again. She forced a smile and told Jackson to take care, echoing the words he had said during their breakup. Seeing her rejection made Jackson sad, though he kept silent about the struggles he faced within his large family. He had to care for several elderly grandmothers, a responsibility that would eventually fall entirely on him. Though he was willing to shoulder this burden selflessly, he knew it would create a difficult life for any partner, which was why he had chosen to avoid marriage. Sitting in his car, Jackson looked at a pearl necklace his mother had given him when she left him as a child. She had told him to look at it whenever he missed her and to strive to become someone who would be recognized by everyone. After his mother's departure, Jackson lived with his father, who was addicted to gambling, alongside neighbors G-Win and Rowan, who faced a similar situation with their own gambling father. One day, while repaying their father's gambling debts together, they came up short by 10,000 won, which had been taken by the siblings' father for drinking. The creditor, an elderly lady who ran a gambling den, confronted them. To protect his siblings, Jackson took the blame, claiming he had lost the money. However, the elderly lady didn't believe him and accused the children of embezzling the money, punishing Jackson. Despite the punishment, he didn't retaliate, but his eyes showed defiance. Perhaps because of this look, the old lady chose not to pursue the matter further. In the following days, Jackson balanced studying and working part-time while still running monthly errands to repay his father's debts to the old woman. Then, a fire broke out at home, and his father died in the blaze, leaving Jackson orphaned. At that point, he planned to move into an orphanage, but the old woman stood in his way, insisting that he continue to pay off his father's debts. Jackson vowed that when he came of age, he would repay every penny. Perhaps moved by his determination, the old woman decided to forgive the debt on one condition, that Jackson live with her instead of going to the orphanage. She promised to support him like her own child, covering his tuition and living expenses. In return, she asked that when she grew old and frail, Jackson would take care of her. Along with the old woman, four other aunts and a sister who owned a bar were responsible for raising him, making it 6 people in total. As they aged, it would be his duty to care for them in return for their kindness. Jackson agreed and moved into the casino run by the aunts. The children next door, abandoned by their father, were in a similar situation. The old woman, unable to collect the money owed by their father, agreed to let them have 3 meals a day at the request of Jackson, who promised to repay their father's debt when he grew up. Over time, he and the siblings became like family, and the house was filled with photos of all of them. As the aunts grew older, one of the grandmothers passed away. At her funeral, the borrowing sister asked Jackson when he planned to marry, as it had been the grandmother's long-held wish. But Jackson, feeling heavy-hearted, believed that no woman would want to marry him, knowing that he would have to take care of all the elderly women. This commitment, he knew, would be a burden for any potential partner. The borrower sister understood that he wasn't against marriage itself, but the woman he loved wasn't suited for the life he lived. At that time, Jackson was deeply in love with Elisa. He had lost a pearl necklace that his mother left him, and Elisa had replaced it with an identical one. Jackson loved this thoughtful gesture from his girlfriend, who suggested hanging the necklace in his car so he could see it every day. He had playfully removed it back then, finding it annoying. But after their breakup, he kept the necklace in his car, realizing how much he still loved her. In a rush, he left his car during a heavy downpour and returned to Elisa's home, hinting at resuming their relationship without marriage. Disappointed, Elisa firmly rejected him. Facing this outcome, Jackson removed the necklace from his car, finally coming to terms with how much he loved her. Later, at the hospital, one of the grandmothers fell and was injured. Jackson felt conflicted, wondering if things with Elisa would have turned out differently if he hadn't made promises to the grandmothers or if the events of his past hadn't occurred. The news station appointed a new anchor for the 9 p.m. news, not Jackson, as was rumored, but a cheerful colleague. A team leader close to Jackson had asked the director to reconsider and give the position to him. However, the director revealed that it was actually Jackson himself who had turned down the offer. This was all to protect Elisa's job, as her anchor position had been threatened by a scheming junior. To keep her position secure, Jackson made a deal with the director, agreeing to give up his dream role as the 9 p.m. news anchor. The team leader informed Elisa, who immediately confronted Jackson in his office, demanding to know why he sacrificed his dream for her. She knew that anchoring the 9 p.m. news was his lifelong goal. After their heated argument, Elisa cried in the elevator, realizing that her harsh words showed she had never truly forgotten him. Years earlier, when they were dating, she had asked why he chose to be with her when everyone said she wasn't good enough for him. Though he didn't respond verbally, he had texted her, "Because I love you." That simple message had filled her with joy at the time. Meanwhile, rumors began spreading at a nearby news station about Lucas and Remy being spotted together late at night in a hotel. Remy explained to her superiors that it wasn't a date. They had just been drinking in the room. Lucas felt sorry for pulling her into the scandal and blamed himself, but Remy was more concerned about how unattractive she looked in the photos than about the scandal itself. As for Lucas, his main worrying was for Luna, who hadn't shown up at the parking lot for work in days, leaving him feeling low. The next morning, thinking over her situation with Jackson, Elisa hesitantly put on a ring given to her by Lucas's mother. She then went for a bike ride along a tree-lined path while Lucas drove to the parking lot, only to see Elisa nearby. As she turned around, their eyes met, and she greeted him with her familiar smile.